Howdy, friends. This week's episode of Retro Groove was recorded before we all learned of the heartbreaking news of the passing of Christine McVie of Fleetwood Mac. Just an endlessly talented musician and songwriter. Our hearts go out to her loved ones, and we say rest in peace to you, Christine. Your music and your legacy lives on forever. Thank you.
Welcome to Retro Groove. Enjoy your voyage. Retro Groove. Retro Groove. Retro Groove.
Howdy. Welcome to Retro Groove. I'm Adam.
And I'm Liam.
And this is a podcast where we talk about music that stands the test of time. Welcome to episode 10 of our second season of Retro Groove. Happy to have you here. We're coming off of Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This will actually go live on December 2nd as we come into the holiday season. Really excited. One of my favorite times of the year. Liam, are you sick of the Christmas music yet, or what's going on?
No, I mean, I balance it out. I feel like I definitely threw on the Charlie Brown, Vince Guaraldi
Heck yeah.
LP. We were decorating the tree the other day, and that just has to go on.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I'm good with it. Yeah. How about
Nice. Yeah, I go in and out of different phases. We might have like a little Christmas music episode. Maybe we'll figure out how that's going to work for us. But one of the staples is that Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong collection.
Yeah.
That's full of classics. Despite the controversy surrounding one of the staples in the Louis Armstrong Christmas collection there. Mm-hmm. But that, and I think I've mentioned this before, but the Amy Grant Christmas album, since it's just like something that my mom always played every single year multiple times when I was a kid, so it's just inside of me as a part of the Christmas season. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. Just small, quiet. I'll say, I know we just came off the Bob James episode. So my brother-in-law was in town, and he cued me in that he had set up his Paramount Plus subscription on our TV. It's one of the streaming services that I don't have. And I was just like clicking through that the day after Thanksgiving, and I found that a good chunk, not all, but a good chunk of Taxi was on Paramount Plus. And we watched a lot of Taxi. Like, I was just like, this is so fitting that we just did a whole Bob James conversation, and I'm just sitting there laughing to Christopher Lloyd and Andy Kaufman with my father-in-law and my family, and it was super fun.
That might actually get me to try out Paramount Plus. That's the only thing that I'm like, oh, maybe I should check out Paramount.
Yeah.
Because like, how many streaming services do you need?
Yeah, it's a bummer. Like, I actually legitimately still have the whole series on DVD.
Oh, there
which
you go.
I'm kind of glad about, because I looked around and I couldn't find the entire 5-season run anywhere.
Man.
So Paramount Plus is the best option right now, but such a good show.
Awesome.
And I also, I ran out. I've been in a weird spot lately where I was like, I think I'm becoming a Nick Cave fan, which would make most people nervous, I think. But I'm also tangentially in a Stevie Wonder place simultaneously.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm up and down. I'm all over the place. It's the holidays. I feel like that's a thing. Like, sometimes you're beaming, and sometimes you're getting real deep. In your head. Yeah. So
definitely, it happens.
Highs and lows, but solid songwriters in either space.
For sure.
Yeah. How about you?
Had a great Thanksgiving. It was very low key. Spent a lot of time during the week with my kids doing fun stuff, Christmas shopping, all that, good stuff. I tried to get a lot of that, out of the way before the day after Thanksgiving. That's not a fun time to get out and do anything. So
No.
had a fun, busy, going out and getting Christmas shopping done earlier in the week.
Nice.
And then the later part of the week was a lot more chill. On Thanksgiving Day, it was my kids' mom's turn to have them for Thanksgiving, so they were over there. And this was kind of going to be the first Thanksgiving where I was like, I didn't have anywhere to go. I normally would have gone over to Dan's. Dan's wife, unfortunately, was sick, so they weren't having anybody over. So I was just like, oh, dang, am I going to spend Thanksgiving by myself? Which, it wasn't like, I wasn't like sad about it. It was just kind of weird. But then my friend Max, who's probably just my best friend outside of my like blood family, found out that I was going to, he was like, hey, let's, after like dinner and everything, we want to go out and get a drink or something. I haven't seen him in a while. And I was like, yeah, the kids are with their mom today, so anytime is fine, just to kind of in passing. And he was like, what? He called me immediately. He was like, you're coming over, right? Like, you're coming here. And he's 100% Mexican, and like with the big family and everything. So he was like, you're coming here. So I was like, okay. And I kind of already mentally prepared to like spend the evening by myself and just chill. I'll maybe stream something. But he insisted that I head down there, and I had never been to like a full blown Mexican Thanksgiving before.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
I've never had so much fun at Thanksgiving. 4 generations of family. I was the only like non-family member there, but they all just like welcomed me. Like, people like got up and like, here, have a seat, and like, let me get you a plate, and like, you got to try this. Like, people I had never, like, I had met a bunch of his family before, but people that I never met were just like welcoming me, and were really cool. There were shots of mezcal. It was pretty amazing. And I was just really grateful for that. So it was really cool. It was a really cool time.
What's the best thing you ate there?
Man, his mom made this chicken mole, and I haven't had mole since like I lived in El Paso 20 years ago. And like no, like if you haven't had mole made by a like someone born in Mexico, right? It was incredible. Like, yeah, they had turkey and all the normal like Thanksgiving fare, but yeah, there was some other things, and the chicken mole was just like mind blowing. But yeah, it was a good day, and then rest of the weekend was real chill with my kids, just hanging out and having fun. Did some online shopping. Didn't really do too much going out of the house until
streaming
Sunday. Yeah, after I got back from doing Thanksgiving, we played some retro games. It was fun. I'm getting a little bit more, like, I kind of go back and forth in waves, just because there were so many new games coming out. I played a bunch of new games the past few months, but now I'm kind of swinging back the other way, playing a lot more retro games. So it's a good time. We have fun.
And you didn't do any Black Friday stuff, right? Like music stuff. There wasn't much for Black Friday Record Store Day that I cared about, so I kind of skipped it this year.
I've never been super into Record Store Day stuff anyway.
Yeah.
If something comes out that I want, I'll try to get it. I'm not gonna, especially on Black Friday. Like
the scalping
I'm more down with the other Record Store Day stuff, but yeah, Black Friday is just no. I'm not going anywhere. We're staying home and like nursing tummy aches on Friday. We're not going anywhere. I did get a guitar.
Ooh, right.
I have not owned. I've been a guitar player for 25 years. That doesn't mean I'm as good as a 25-year guitar player probably should be. It doesn't mean I've been studying religiously and studiously.
Your 10,000 hours, yeah.
Exactly. No. But I'd been without one for like 7 years.
Wow.
And
completely? Didn't have one at all?
No, not one that belonged to me. I would borrow one here and there.
Wow.
Like I would borrow one of Dan's or
Yeah.
another family member. And ultimately they're like, hey, can I have my guitar back?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, it was like something came across my path and it was time. So I was able to get myself a little early Christmas present that,
Good.
yeah, it was almost a spiritual experience for me. So
Yeah.
it's always amazing to get a new instrument that's like your instrument and go through the process of like getting to know the instrument, feeling the ins and outs and finding out what her name is and stuff like that.
Yeah, bonding.
So exactly.
Yeah, there's
it was
that
awesome.
goes on. Like you have an extension of you that can exist in that form. I've had periods of that time too, especially like from college into my first apartment or whatever, where like I had an acoustic guitar that I kind of dragged along that was my dad's, and like I gave it back to him and I didn't really have anything kicking around. And that first time that you like sink down the money to have your own guitar, like again at least, is like there's a commitment to it, but it also just feels like there's a permanence to this expressive side of you, right? That's
I don't sell instruments. Like not like that.
Yeah.
I don't sell guitars.
Yeah. So that's cool. That's exciting, man. I can only imagine what that feels like to like have that back and you've messed with it a little bit.
Oh yeah, I've been playing it quite a bit, and that type. So it's a Telecaster Deluxe, which after so many years of playing different, guitars of different makes and models, and I had veered towards the Telecaster route very early.
Yeah.
And at some point discovered the Deluxe, which is, the double humbucker designed in the early 70s to kind of more or less compete with the Les Paul. Definitely can create some heavier, darker tones, but still kind of get that higher end. It doesn't really have the twang of a traditional Telecaster, which is kind of seen a little bit more like a country guitar, or can be.
Yeah.
But this one is definitely a lot, more darker in tone. It still slaps and spanks like a Fender, but it's definitely darker and more like growly. They voiced these pickups to sound like the early 70s guitar pickups would sound.
Sick.
So it's really right up my alley, and it's kind of perfect for me. So I'm really happy about it.
And it's a used guitar, right?
No, it's actually new. It's
new. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just was the right thing at the right time with the right
Killer.
kind of, holiday discount.
Yeah, treat yourself.
You got to treat yourself. But for me, it was kind of more part of a journey of finding myself again. You know what I
Good.
mean? It sounds so silly and cliche or whatever, but
No.
yeah, it's a huge part of who I am.
Yeah.
So getting back to that, it's been really, I kind of lack the words to describe it. It's just been really amazing. It's been wonderful. And I'm glad to finally have that part of me back, really, honestly. So maybe you'll get some new music from me in the future. Haven't put out any like music in about 9 years, so that might be fun.
Some new jams on the podcast too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Custom Adam jams. All right.
Maybe
cool.
you get a new theme song, or at least
All
maybe
right.
like an updated version of the theme song.
An
Like that's still the
interpretation,
theme. That when you see like you have a sitcom and like after the first season or two, you're like, they jammed up it's the same song, but they like jazzed it up or something.
Well, you spookied it up for Halloween this year.
Yeah, it was the same. I just added sound effects and added a little organ on top of it.
Yeah.
But maybe I could re-record it and just make it new and improved. That might be fun.
Get funky. Okay, cool.
Maybe it could be.
So today
Yeah.
we are two white guys who are going to be talking about some ladies, correct?
Yes.
So we'll put
Yep.
that out there up top that we are two dudes talking about a bunch of ladies. We're going to be celebrating some incredible women in music history. Some of the most impactful. We want to call them front women. You want to call them leading ladies. How do you want to? What do you think?
Front women of rock, I think,
Front
just
women of
kind of
rock.
to me,
Yeah.
kind of rolls off the tongue.
Okay.
But you could call it whatever you want. It's really just celebrating, because you see it a lot in rock and roll where it's like it's beyond a cliche at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have like the cocky dude lead singer and
Right.
like the female bass player. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like that's like we were joking about it recently in our I think it was in the Halloween episode where we were putting together our spooky bands, where like it's always like the brooding and kind of cocky male
Yeah.
lead singer / lead guitar player once in a while, and it's always the female bass player, and at some
Yeah.
point the female bass player always gets replaced. So it's like, okay, let's flip the script a little bit. Let's talk about, okay, there are some super talented, super strong, amazing front women
Yeah.
that lead the band that they're in with, you know, just a level of coolness that maybe a front man isn't capable of. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a completely different vibe.
It
right?
is. I also think just the cultural landscape of what music was, or what recorded popular music, the industry behind it, was always very restrictive to women, albeit maybe outside of a handful of like spaces. You had your girl groups, your doo-wop groups, and such, and things that were sort of more orchestrated by men, which I think I'm going to get into in a little bit, but
I'm sure
it's difficult to kind of find a balance here, because you could also swing so far to the other side. There was Haim put out an album recently, and it was called, I think it was Women in Music 3. And it was almost to poke fun at this whole thing of like, look at the women and look at them in the music industry. Like at this point, it's so undeniable that you almost don't need to spotlight it as their commentary. But I do think that there's value, just as in any situation, in kind of looking at some of the pioneers, some of the people who were able to like push through, and there's countless who were kind of just suppressed throughout the whole process, but a few who were able to kind of push through, and the paradigm shift that they caused, the influence that they had. You know, it wasn't just woman to woman. Some of the people that we're going to be talking about today completely changed how everybody approaches music in general, gender aside from all of this. But the fact that they were doing it at the time that they were, as a woman, and as they were perceived or valued at that time, just makes it that much more incredible that that they were able to do this. There's this, I think I've talked about it before, but I still have this wonder of the ability for anyone, regardless of your creed, race, whatever, to break through. Like the formula that you need of talent in writing, or in at least working with talented writers, as a performer, as a marketer for yourself, as having that mind of persistence and vision for your trajectory, and then there's the luck factor of like,
definitely,
even getting that break. It doesn't seem like that should ever line up. Like obviously the dice lands in the right spot sometimes, but like it really doesn't seem like it should happen too often. And I, in coming up with my list, and I don't know how yours went. We do these things separately, and I think this will make for, we have a companion playlist that I think will be pretty expansive ultimately for this. Yeah, like we'll represent everybody on this thing, but we're going to try to come to our high five kind of agreement here. But it's crazy to me how many names kept bubbling up. I kept thinking of these artists, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many. And
yeah,
I have some criteria that I went into on this, but what was your process like? Did you do some digging? How did you feel when you were coming up with these names?
There really wasn't a whole lot of digging. For me, the only kind of difficulty that I ended up having was, okay, like now the positioning, like, cause it was very easy to come up with, off the top of my head, like 7 or 8, just almost effortlessly.
Right.
So I had my like formative list very, very quickly.
Right.
That wasn't a problem at all. And then the kind of the only difficulty that I had is, well, eventually, since we're doing a top 5, because we don't necessarily want this to go for 4 hours.
Right.
We can't do a top 10. So at some point we need to cut it off. So it's like, so what I kind of tried to do then is like, okay, so who's pushing even further beyond, like, so there's the glass ceiling of kind of being a front woman in rock and roll in general. And then, so who's pushing boundaries kind of even beyond that? You know what I mean? So that helped me to push the top 5 and kind of narrow that down. Okay. And then the only part that ended up being a little bit difficult was like, okay, now how do I position these 5 in the and rank them? That part was kind of difficult.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even have that. Like, I have mine.
You just have the 5.
I have 4 that I feel strongly about, and then I have a bunch of 5 contenders. I have 1 in my sort of 5 spot, but I am very open to. I'm open to any of this stuff, but I couldn't put them in an order. Like, as I'm looking at them now, I guess there's a fairly obvious 1 or 2, but my number 1, which again, like, I don't even know how best to go about this process. I don't even know. Like, I think she counts. Like, I think it technically fits, but like, we're going to have to figure out what our criteria is here, because so let's say, Beyonce, right, is an obvious contender in a space like this, not of rock, so doesn't fit into this format necessarily, but also, like, was she the front woman of Destiny's Child? Like, they were a group, like, she was the standout talent, but like, Kelly Rowland's awesome. Like, it was an ensemble situation. So I think that Destiny's Child and Beyonce is probably a better fit for a, say, future episode on girl groups or women ensembles, or however we want to call it, than for something like this. I had the same issue with Lauryn Hill, where I was like, Lauryn Hill is like a standout, one of the most important artists, especially female artists of our generation, at least. Yeah. But like, again, not really rock, although alt hip hop, like, it's alternative, but also like, the Fugees were an ensemble. She was a standout talent, but Wyclef and Praz, like, they all pulled their weight in that band and had an identity that was. I couldn't wholeheartedly say that Lauryn Hill was the front woman of that band. She was the female member of that band, you know? So like, I couldn't include her. Do you agree? Like, is that the,
and there were a couple that like kind of were on my initial like big, just off the top of my head dump that ended up not making the cut, because it's like, well, were they really the singular front woman of that group? Like, so a couple for me that were like okay, so they were obviously in the rock space, but like
I'm really hoping that you say someone who's on my list right now, because that
would
make
be
things
awesome.
really interesting.
So to go to like one of the most obvious answers that I don't think is going to fit the criteria is like a Stevie Nicks.
Yes,
because
agreed.
like
Okay.
like
yes,
is she the front woman of Fleetwood Mac?
right. So
no, but
Fleetwood Mac had a bunch of albums before she joined, but she joined with Lindsey Buckingham, right? And Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie had a little ensemble and relationship before Fleetwood Mac. And when you listen to the breadth of even the Fleetwood Mac hits, it's a bunch of Stevie and it's a bunch of Lindsey, you know?
Right, right.
So she is just like in Lauryn Hill with the Fugees. She is the standout woman. Nothing against Christine McVie, but like she's the standout woman in most of those songs, but she's not the front woman.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I thought maybe we would have a disagreement on that, but okay, cool.
Well, and then the other one that was going to be pretty high on my list, but ultimately had to Nicks for the same reason. No pun intended. I just said Nicks. No,
I love
no
it.
pun. No pun
I'm
intended.
Here for it. Yeah.
Is
keep the pun.
Sleater Kinney with Corinne Tucker and Carrie Brownstein. It's like there's like double front woman thing going on, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, pre Janet Weiss leaving the band, they're just among my favorite, like, I don't know what subgenre you want to put them in, but I adore Sleater Kinney.
Yeah.
So that was tough to leave out, but it was like, okay, it doesn't fit the criteria for this particular episode. We want to have, you know, whatever you want to call it, a Riot Girl episode. They're number one. Like, let's, you know what I mean? But right now we have this criteria. It's an arbitrary criteria, but we got to make the episode. Like,
yeah. Well, and it's not explicitly then just us having a conversation where we're celebrating that women were successful in the music industry. It's just giving a little sort of focus to foster a fun conversation and a debate. I had that with Annie Lennox because, like,
oh yeah,
the Eurythmics really are a duo, and they're equal parts her and Dave Stewart often, you know? So like I love Annie Lennox and I love some of her solo stuff, but like I couldn't in good faith say like that made a lot of sense. And again, I know rock is very vague, but I'm looking at Patti LaBelle and Diana Ross and Ronnie Spector, and like all of them are the leading women of their groups. I mean, LaBelle basically calls the band LaBelle after a few albums, but like Nona Hendrix is very, very predominant and important. And so you can't take that away from her. I mean, Diana Ross is almost undeniable, except that like it was an ensemble, you know, the Supremes were the Supremes, and then she's the breakout star. It's the Justin Timberlake from NSYNC, but Justin Timberlake wasn't the front man of NSYNC as much as he was the most talented one. Like he was, I mean, I like Joey Fatone. He's a cool guy. But like it's a collaborative group. So,
and you always have that, you know, in these ensemble groups or whatever you want to call it, boy bands, girl groups, whatever, there always tends to be one, maybe two like standouts.
Right.
And for whatever reason, even if they're just happen to be the most outspoken and not necessarily the more talented, there's always just kind of the favorites or the standouts or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's often a matter of gravity. I mean, a lot of times those groups are founded around a person, you know, like a lot of times a talent is found and they build a group around that, or a partnership is formed and then they flesh out the rest of the group. So yeah, there's bound to be like a central force in a lot of those. And then the last thing that I'll say before I think maybe we start debating or discussing is, again, just to head off any of this, is the solo artists who are performing in front of a band, like Joni Mitchell, Taylor Swift, like they had bands, but they're, it doesn't really fit what we're talking about here. I really like Miley Cyrus. I think that she's becoming this like force that we don't even know what she's capable of yet in many ways, and reinventing pop music, but like, and she's got a killer band, dude. Did you listen to American Hi-Fi back in the day at all? Do you remember that band? They were like a pop punky band from the late 90s, early 2000s.
I remember the band. I don't remember listening to it all that much.
So the lead singer of American Hi-Fi, just crazy aside, is this guy, Stacy. I'm blanking on his last name. But he is Miley's music director and drummer, and like the sort of
that's right. Okay.
Collaborator on all of her vision to this day, like throughout this whole Hannah Montana till today. It's just one of those weird things where like I was very into American Hi-Fi in high school. I loved that album, and then I remember like seeing him playing drums, and I'm like, hey, that's that guy. He's the guy from that band. What is he doing with Miley Cyrus? So anyway, and aside. So yeah, nice. No solo artists here. We're not digging into Taylor or like Aretha or any of that space, right?
Yeah, there's room to dig into them in a lot of other
we got other episodes we can do that kind of stuff. Yeah, let's save ourselves that conversation. All right, so you do have a 5 to 1 or a 1 to 5.
Yeah, and honestly, as is typical for what we do, ranking these at the top kind of ended up coming down to more like personal impact a little bit.
Okay.
I tried to do less of that this time around.
Same.
But number one, it's kind of hard not to.
Yeah.
But also, it again, I was kind of, okay, like obviously they're all deserving of being on this list, but like who like made the biggest like impact, whether it's currently or in their time or whatever. Yeah. With both breaking boundaries and just like, or even just raising the bar. I tried to do that more so than be like, which one affected me more in a formative time in my life. You know what I mean? Because
right.
I don't know. With this one, I tried to break out of that. Not that that's necessarily taking the easy route. That's just the more personal route. I tried to be a little bit more objective with some other criteria.
Okay.
So, challenging myself a little bit to step outside the comfort zone, do a little bit more, thinking, and also giving credit where credit is due. So that's where I ended up with making those final decisions. But honestly, this is probably the easiest top 5 I've done so far.
All right. Okay.
So not that it was easy, but it was like not as difficult as some of the other ones have been.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, we have a game that we want to play, right? I know that we've been talking about this. Do we want to jump into that now and hit that, or do we?
I think we've set up the episode, so let's lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, kind of get some, I don't know, brain elasticity going on.
Well,
and then
if you're
clear
saying
the palate
that
a little bit.
Yeah, if you're saying your list is easy, that actually makes me a little nervous, because now I'm like, well, if there's dissonance here, like we're gonna have to talk through some of this stuff.
That's fine. Yeah. That's half the fun.
What's the purpose of it. Yeah.
And then so we'll get into this quick game here. So Mike, the ambassador, shout out to him. Always good with coming up with interesting and hilarious games for us Retrologic hosts to play. And this is the first time that he's given us something for an episode. But so this is a game where he's going to give us a drawn out, literal interpretation of a song title.
Dear God.
And it's up to us to determine what song specifically he's talking about.
I wish we knew what kind of music he was into. I mean, I'm hoping that he's just gonna throw some stuff over the plate here, because like there's a lot of songs, dude. I mean, there's,
Right.
there's so many songs.
Exactly. So I will say this, like, just to kind of figure out what format, because he sent them to me in a private message with them like spoilered, so they were like covered up. So I peeked at the first clue to be like, okay, what is this? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I instantly knew what it was.
Okay, cool.
So,
okay.
and I'm sure they probably get more difficult, but so obviously the first one's going to be pretty easy. This is the only one that I looked at beforehand, but like I instantaneously got it.
Okay.
Okay. So the first song is, and this is the song title specifically,
All right.
Scoop Some Cane Sweetener on My Being.
All right. So it pours some sugar on me.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's fun.
Okay.
All right.
So you can see, okay, so that was kind of like, okay, you can
Do we
see
name
what
the
we're,
band? Like, do we say that's Def Leppard?
yeah, that's
it
Def
doesn't matter?
Leppard.
Okay.
I guess we don't,
We
I
don't
mean,
have
that
to,
one
but-
you don't really have to, but it depends on the song, I guess.
Right.
Okay, so the next one we're going in blind, and this song title is Fully Conscious Through Twilight Hours.
Awake.
Oh, Up All Night? Is there a song called Up All Night?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of songs called Up All Night.
Yeah, I know. So
Yeah.
we might not. Well, so we got the song probably, unless it's something off the wall.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
there's a. I mean, I feel like there's a. Is it Daft Punk has a song Up All Night? Up All Night to Get Lucky. No, that's.
Yeah, that's Lucky, or Get Lucky.
I mean, like, look, there's a Blink 182 song called Up All Night. Does he give you the answers?
Yes,
Okay.
or the band. The name of the band is the next like
Right.
hint or whatever.
Yeah. It's gonna be tough, man.
I agree.
I mean, I agree that it's Up All Night. Like, I feel like the twilight hours has got to be night, fully conscious. Yeah.
So which Up All Night are we going with? Let's just go with something. Blink 182.
No, I mean that's a pretty deep cut. Well, I guess it was a single, but it's a single on an album people don't like. That's Lucky, right? That's not.
Is there anything
like-
that we're not thinking of?
I feel like
Was it Beck? Who else has a song called Up All Night?
maybe I don't know my Beck so well.
I know there's a Beck song called Up All Night.
Okay, well let's go with Beck then.
Well, so let's give it a try.
Okay.
Beck Up All. It's Crocus.
Crocus.
What's the Crocus? Does Crocus have an Up All Night? Stayed Awake All Night
Oh.
off of Headhunter. Or wait, Screaming in the Night? No, it wouldn't be Screaming in the Night. Stayed Awake All Night. It's got to be Stayed Awake All Night. Okay, that's a deep cut, Mike.
Yeah. Also, Crocus. Like, I don't know my Crocus.
Not on
This
my
is gonna be
radar.
tough. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, most people aren't. Other than Ballroom Blitz, I don't think I could name another Crocus song
Yeah.
aside from Ballroom Blitz.
Wow. All right.
All right, thanks, Mike. Deep cut. Okay,
Look, that's how you learn about new music. I'm down for
exactly.
it.
All right, so now we need to look into some Crocus. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the next song title is Refrain from Being Socially Brutal. Don't Be Cruel. Elvis Presley.
Socially brutal.
Refrain from being socially brutal. How is that not Don't Be Cruel?
It could be. Yeah. I mean, it's fair. The socially brutal, I guess, is cruel. I don't know. Socially brutal is hanging me up a little bit, but like, I feel like it's like you wreck a party if you're socially brutal. I don't know.
Refrain from, so stop Um, stop. Stop. I can't think of anything that starts with.
I think we go with Don't Be Cruel. I think that's a good look. Go with your gut. Usually you're on par. I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
Don't
Let's
be
go with
cruel.
Don't Be
Elvis.
Cruel,
Okay,
Elvis
Don't Be
Presley,
Cruel. Elvis Presley. Cheap Trick.
Wait, hold on. Okay, hold on. Cheap Trick. What cheap? I want you to want me. Surrender.
No.
What? So you have the song title there?
No.
Oh, he said he just showed you the band.
Right.
I actually kind of like this. Like
there is a Cheap Trick song called Don't Be Cruel.
Oh.
Off
so
of Lap of Luxury, 1988.
So is it Don't Be Cruel by Cheap Trick?
I mean, it has to be. What else?
Okay.
Well, so we got the song. I'm giving us partial credit on that because how are we supposed to know which Don't Be Cruel? No, you know what? I'm giving us full credit for that because we got the exact song title.
Here's the thing.
Or is the Elvis Presley song have like a subtitle?
All right. Don't Be Cruel was a single, it looks like. Oh, it's them. Wait, it's a cover.
It's a cover of the Elvis song?
Yeah, it's a cover.
Okay,
Mike.
so we got that. We got that one.
Very interesting.
Throwing us a curveball again.
Cheap Trick. I like Cheap Trick. I don't think I've ever heard this Elvis Presley cover. Yeah.
Me either.
We need hits, dude. We're not experts here. We're just a bunch of schmucks.
We don't profess to be all right.
Yeah.
Schmuck talk.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Okay, affectionate feelings are en route to your destination. Affectionate feelings are en route to your destination.
I mean, it's delivery, love delivery, message in a bottle. No.
No.
Affectionate feelings.
But en route to your direction. I got nothing. Affectionate feelings. So love is on the way. I don't know of any songs like that.
Yeah, I don't think I know a song called Love is on the Way.
What else would be affectionate feelings?
Well, I mean, we try to be a clean podcast, so I can't really answer that question, Adam. But we could talk about that sometime. I don't know. So you get the band there, right?
Yeah. Okay, so Saigon Kick. Hold on.
Saigon Kick.
I don't know
Who is listening
anything.
to Saigon Kick?
Not me.
Yeah. Something tells me Mike really
Saigon
likes hard
Kick.
rock from the 90s.
That's what it sounds
80s.
like.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we kind of know what wheelhouse we're in.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a song by Saigon Kick called Love is on the Way.
Oh, wow. Okay. There you go. Well, hey, you said that. So that's good.
Saigon Kick. I don't know anything about Saigon Kick.
Yeah, I'm going to have to educate myself on Saigon Kick. It looks like this says number 12 hit. It was their big song. So I'll give it to Mike there. Like, if you're going to listen or talk about something from Saigon Kick, apparently it's Love is on the Way. I bet this feels like a song, Adam, where if we heard it right now,
we would recognize it instantly.
Yeah, it feels like that. I think
it's the first song that came up when I Googled Saigon Kick songs.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's got to be,
Okay.
The other ones I kind of had to scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I get it. Okay. I know where our headspace is, I think, a little bit now. It's a little bit of a departure from my normal wheelhouse, but we can get there.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay, the next song title is My First Contact with This Sensation. My first contact with this sensation.
Pour Some Sugar on Me, Def Leppard.
It can't be far off. So I'm first
initial
First time. Is there a first time?
Well, but he
something?
wouldn't say first if it was in the title, I'm assuming, right?
What else would you say?
Yeah. Well, initial is a terrible word to rhyme with.
First contact with this sensation. So there's no like first love, before wake me up before you go.
I'm going to have to look up like Motley Crue hits,
I don't know.
like I'm just gonna have to like, let me pull up Motley Crue's greatest hits here. Cause we're inevitably going to get over there somewhere, or maybe Rat. Let's pull up Rat.
First contact with this sensation. First love. Is there? My brain keeps going to like first love.
This sensation.
This sensation.
Feels like
this
friction.
feeling. First feeling.
Yeah.
Feeling.
Yeah. More than a feeling.
More than a feeling. Not far
I feel
off.
Like there's probably a better way to.
For my first contact. So there's like a ownership of this. Do we need the band?
I think we need the band.
Yeah, I've got pretty much nothing. I don't know of any like first love or my first whatever, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Band is Foreigner.
Oh wow. Okay.
I want to know what love is? Can't be. That doesn't really fit.
No.
All right, Foreigner songs.
Hold on.
Want to know Waiting for a Girl Like You? No. Feels like the first time.
Feels like the first time.
It has to be.
It's got to be, yeah.
Okay. It's not Dirty White Boy. So
no.
I mean, there's an argument for I want to know what love is, but it's got to be Feels Like the First Time.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, in my brain, if you said who sings Feels Like the First Time, in my brain it wasn't Foreigner, so I don't know.
No, I felt like a Styx song to me or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Like, yeah, I was gonna.
I know,
think like Supertramp or something.
Oh yeah, Hot Blooded is Foreigner. I feel like I know 2 Foreigner songs.
Yeah, it is.
I should probably know.
Yeah,
more
it's
Foreigner
always
songs.
Hot Blooded and I Want to Know What Love Is.
Yeah.
Or Cold as Ice, I think.
Oh, Cold as Ice is them. Okay.
But that's another one that could, easily be mistaken for Supertramp. So that must be like the late 70s Foreigner.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. We got to get through this. Notice what the domesticated lynx brought to our doorstep. That's got to be Look What the Cat Dragged In.
Yeah, Look What the Cat Dragged In.
Who is that? Okay. Who's Look What the Cat Dragged In?
I think it's Poison.
Is it Poison? All right.
I'm pretty sure it's Poison.
It's Poison.
Okay, cool. Okay, we got that one.
All right,
Domesticated lynx is hilarious.
Domesticated lynx. All right. Nice.
Good job, Mike.
Good job. This is the last count back from 100.
It's the final countdown.
It has to be, right? Who's that?
So.
Asia?
I hope it's Europe. No, Europe.
Oh, no, it's Europe. No, yeah, Europe. Yes, it's Europe. Okay.
Okay, cool.
See, these now, they got
Mike,
easier.
Mike, you're giving us hits. Let's go.
Of course, they said Asia first. That was wrong.
We're a greatest hits podcast.
Hey, at least I got a continent.
Yeah.
Physically attracted to an employee of the education system.
See, I knew we'd get to Motley Crue. I told you we'd get to Motley Crue.
That's not Motley Crue.
Hot for Teacher?
No.
Who is it?
Hot for Teacher is Van Halen, my friend.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I was thinking girls.
Oh.
You're right.
Oh.
All right. Well, I'm glad I got you here.
Man. Okay, so we're on a roll now. I don't know
if Teachers Van Halen. You're right.
Did these get easier or we just got better at it?
No, he's giving us hits.
There we go.
There was some deep stuff.
Crocus and Saigon Kick. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, two more.
Skid Row.
Ombre resembles a member of the feminine sect.
Dude looks like a lady. Aerosmith. Let's go, Mike. I
has
like
to be.
this.
Yeah, Aerosmith.
Keep tossing them up.
Okay, last one. Yes, it was Aerosmith. Okay. Ombre resembles a member of the feminine sect.
Fantastic.
Okay. Last one. Invitation to the tangly chaparral.
Chaparral? What is that?
I thought it was like,
A horse?
no.
Tangly. What is a chaparral? I know it's a kind of boat. Chaparral. Okay, I'm gonna go to my phone and I'm googling a chaparral because I don't know what that means. CHA.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm going to be honest.
2 R's. Chaparral.
He's got it 2 P's and 1 R.
Oh, 2 P's, 1 R. The boat has 2 R's and 1 P.
So it's Google is correcting it to 1 P, 2 R's.
Mm-hmm.
Chaparral is a
Say it
bush
again?
or a tree.
What's it again? Invitation?
Chaparral is a shrubland plant community and geographical feature found primarily in the United States.
It's an invitation to it? To a tangly...
Chaparral is a shrubland plant community.
It's a bush. Right, it's a bush. So
welcome to the jungle.
Welcome to the jungle. Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses. Yep.
The tangly chaparral.
Well, I learned a new word today.
Yeah, dude. That's very good, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's like shrubland, I guess.
Saigon Kick.
I know nothing about Saigon Kick. Thank you, Mike. No, this was fun.
Mike,
do another one.
Again. Yeah, do it again, but more rat next time.
I won't get the rat one for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, that was fun. Thank you, Mike. All right, so we've had a palate cleanser. A very fun palate cleanser. So now is I know we mentioned it, but I would like to now officially plug the fact that we have an episode companion playlist that we curate and put together. We do one for both Apple Music and Spotify. I was doing it for YouTube, but I feel like I was just putting the YouTube playlist together for Dan and nobody else. But if you listen to playlists on YouTube, let me know. We'll start doing YouTube playlists again. But so what you may want to do is when you hear a song mentioned, go and listen to that song. So occasionally what I'll do when I'm listening to the podcast is I hear a song or an album mentioned, and I'll pause the podcast and go listen to that. So since the legalities of actually playing music on the podcast are dubious at best, and we don't want to put the podcast at risk, we can't play music on the podcast, as was something that we originally kind of talked about and looked into the legalities of and wanted to do. But since we can't really do that, which that may change in the future if things and licensing and something, that's more Liam's expertise on that side of things. Maybe that will change eventually. But for now, we can't actually play music on the podcast. So instead, we put together a companion playlist for each episode with music featured, talked about in the episode. So you can look up Retro Groove on Apple Music. I share the link every time that a new episode goes live, and there's Spotify as well. So there's playlists for both of those streaming services. Or you can just use your own streaming service, whatever you have available, or if you have the albums. We'll post the list every time we post an episode. So now's a good time to get that lined up if you'd like to follow along with the episode companion playlist. So how we typically do the high five is we go back and forth with, do you have a ranked top 5, or are you just going to be kind of going? And if not, that's fine. We don't have to necessarily start off that way.
I basically do. I just my 5. I feel like I'm gonna go into this like assuming that my 5 is just gonna be an honorable mention almost because I don't think that it'll stick.
Okay.
The other 4 I think are contenders.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got an order.
Okay, cool. So normally how we do it is we'll go back and forth. We'll start with our number 5, each of us, and then each of us do 4, 3, 2, and our top 1. And then we will attempt to come to a consensus on a retro groove top 5
Right.
based on how we hash it out. So, do you want to go first? Let me know
I'll go
what
first.
you got.
That's cool. Yeah. So my first is probably definitely the most contemporary of all on my list. I'm a huge fan of hers. I see so many different options on where she will ultimately go. I'm excited to see what happens next. My number 5 is Brittany Howard, lead singer of the Alabama Shakes. I think she is a grade A badass. I think she does
Definitely.
exactly like she just marches to the beat of her own drum. She's got a lot to say.
For sure.
She doesn't play games. She like the stories that I've heard, the interviews and such. She is unapologetically herself.
For sure.
And she has been through a lot. She
Yeah.
obviously takes a lot of pages out of a lot of like blues icons. There's another singer who I'm gonna throw on the list later on. That actually there's 2 singers that I'll probably talk about later on who I think she has been directly influenced by. But she does things in her own way, especially if you listen to her solo album, Jamie.
Yes.
It there's so much there that's going to happen with Brittany Howard that it's one of those watching it happen in progress where you can foresee her being one of these other people that we talk about on the list who will have influenced another generation with her own take on or her own interpretation of what some others did before her.
Yeah.
But also uniquely her own. She can play, she can write. Her stage presence is fantastic.
Amazing.
She can howl. She's got grit.
Her voice is unparalleled, in my opinion.
Real deal. But there's an authenticity there that's going to again run through this whole list. But
Yeah.
like of the criteria here, there is this authenticity to her where it's like you can get on or you can get off. She doesn't care, but she's putting this out. Yeah. Go listen to Goathead. I mean, like that off that solo album. Like, I mean, she's won 5 Grammys already. There's 2 Alabama Shakes albums and a solo album. 5 Grammys is pretty solid.
Unmistakable.
Yeah. For a not Taylor Swift type artist. I mean, she is not your typical pop starlet, Demi Lovato, Miley Cyrus, whatever. She is herself, So she's my number 5. Look, there's a lot of other contemporary artists that I have a lot of reverence for. I had Florence Welch was the other person who was like in that position. I was going back and forth on from Florence and the Machine. But I got to give the nod in this one to Brittany Howard. I think. Yeah, I think we'll hear a lot from both of them in the future of how they've influenced people.
Oh, for sure.
But Brittany, I think, stands out just a little bit in my book more.
Also, I love like any time that an artist comes from just kind of absolute obscurity, like out of such poverty,
undeniable, right?
And then just to, and also we kind of share a personal connection where her childhood family home was struck by lightning and burned down. as what happened to me.
No.
Yeah. So
Wow. Didn't know that about either of you.
yeah, I mean, but they were just, their childhood family home was in like a junkyard situation. Like they came from poverty.
Oh yeah.
And just because it's like, there are people that are genuinely talented, but then you find out like both of their parents are also famous. And it's like, okay, like you had a leg up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm always more, and it doesn't take away from their talent necessarily, but it's like when you come from nothing, you come from complete obscurity. It's always just kind of, wow. Like it seems more authentic to me.
Yeah. Well, and there's also just as the quick backstory too, there's that whole thing. I mean, so the solo album was Jamie, which was the name of her older sister who died,
right,
of a condition that she also shared with Brittany. Brittany had the same thing, but
she survived.
Yeah, she lost eyesight in one eye, but survived it. And Brittany has said in interviews that like Jamie was the talented one.
Wow.
You know, she was talking like that's like Jamie taught her how to play piano and
so she's on a mission. Like
yeah, like she's almost like carrying her with her in this drive to create and express. Like there's a lot of heavy stuff going on there, and then you listen to the music and it bleeds through, man. Like you can't not with an artist like that. These aren't just sugar-coated pop songs that are getting out there, and it's fantastic.
So I hope this doesn't throw off the flow of the episode, but I feel like I should take this moment to say that Brittany Howard is my number 4.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Hey, maybe she's gonna make it on the list then. That's great. Okay, cool.
Heck yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
all right. So, Wilson, what's your 5? Let's do your 5. And then, yeah.
So that'll make the number 4 spot a little bit quicker. So my number 5 is Chrissy Hynde.
Okay. Good call.
You probably could have guessed that she would have been on my top 5. I talk about the Pretenders, or have talked about the Pretenders quite a bit. I've got at least their first 3 albums, and huge, just incredibly influential in the time that they were popular. Out of Akron, Ohio. Just a great. Chrissy was from Akron. The band wasn't formed. The Pretenders weren't formed in Akron. But just to keep things accurate, but like, you know, her coming up and starting. She started a band in college with Mark Mothersbaugh. I don't think a lot of people know this. Yeah, well, with Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo, yes.
Yeah.
So before Devo, before the Pretenders, she was in she started a band when she was at Kent State.
Wow.
With Mark Mothersbaugh. No
idea.
And then she also, being at Kent State, she was caught up in the Kent State massacre in 1970.
Ooh. Wow.
And actually one of her friends was one of the victims in the massacre. So it's like, whoo. But then she moved to London in the early 70s, and that's where the band started, interestingly enough. But she's actually from Ohio. But just to have this kind of, I mean, you had Blondie, but like, to me, like, I respect Blondie for what they did. I was never much of a Blondie fan. Like, the Pretenders were my Blondie. Like, to have that kind of rock, but like dipping the toe into new wave and stuff like that. I was enamored by the Pretenders. And so I think with everything that they were able to accomplish in the late 70s, early 80s, I think that, you know, they made an impact that really lasted for at least a generation, if not more.
Yeah.
And, you know, they would go on to, you know, not necessarily blazing a trail, but they took kind of some trails that were there and said, hey, like, you can have a strong female front woman and go down this same path. And so I give them a lot of props. And I just think Chrissy Hines is amazing. Sorry. It's like
No, I
that's
think she's
me.
a badass. She's got
Total
she's-
badass.
There's a swagger to her that is incredibly intimidating, which
we
is
love.
very punk. Yeah.
And it's like, and I feel like Chrissy Hynde is not my stand-in, but like I had to get one of these artists up there. And you know, I talked about Sleater Kinney kind of having the double front woman thing.
She started the Riot Girl. I mean, there's no Riot
Totally.
Girl movement without her and without the Slits. Like there's a bunch. Like it's hard to just typify anything,
totally.
But, yeah.
But one of the bands that I initially had on there was the Runaways with Joan Jett. But it's
That's
like,
tough.
okay,
Yeah.
but Joan Jett really, she wasn't the front woman, and it was kind of like both of them. What it
There was Sherry Curry. There was Lita Ford. Like that's
Right.
It almost was an ensemble. I had the same
Exactly.
situation with her, where like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts do have their own success, so you could make the argument for Joan Jett. But I think Chrissy Hynde is probably the
Yeah.
cleaner and probably broader impact. I mean, Joan Jett.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think Joan Jett for pop music as it is for the MTV generation, maybe a little bit more, but like Chrissy Hynde, they had hits for sure. And,
Definitely.
And had a broader like impact on musicians who were creating at the time, like the movements. Yeah.
And they're still going. Like she's
Yeah.
still playing.
Yeah.
She's still active.
Yeah, so I mean, my Blondie is Blondie. So
There you go.
So my number 4 is Debbie Harry, which is unsurprisingly
There you
for
go.
a CBGB's kid.
For sure.
It's funny. It's funny that there's similar. Like if you put the two next to each other, they don't seem like they necessarily would be friends. I think I get maybe I'm wrong. It's interesting. Like you think of her and Debbie and Susie Sue and some of the other like
Yeah.
sort of punk rock pioneers in that space of women at the front. I mean, folk music had its female singer-songwriters
Of course.
for forever, right? Like that was one space that women were able to kind of get a foothold and have people listen and pay attention and respect. But in the rock space, I feel like punk really, it was part of the defining characteristics of what punk was. Is there's a reason why we're talking about trying to figure out which punk front woman is
Exactly.
the more impactful punk front woman, because there's so many great ones, you know, like because that genre, because that culture allowed for it. It embraced it, celebrated it. I mean, the reason why I would go Debbie Harry is there is this sugar coated pill almost to pop culture, where they had hits that got played extensively. Like you think of Heart of Glass, One Way or Another, Call Me, like those are timeless songs that took what that kind of new wavy punk infused music was and put it out there. And obviously the Blondie moniker was to like embrace or take the piss out of chauvinism. Like that's what the construction workers in New York were shouting at her, and so she's like, fine, you want to see Blondie?
Here
I'm
you
gonna
go.
kick your ass. Yeah.
Exactly. I love it.
So I see so much in her. I mean, we joked when we talked about kind of teeing this up last time that we're going to talk about Shirley Manson, you're going to talk about Gwen Stefani. I think a lot of the women that we're talking about right now, like they're the reason why these people exist, or
totally.
or I should say at least were felt
Major
that they
influence.
could do it, you know, like I want to give them all the benefit of the doubt that regardless of what it is, they're artists and they would have found a way to express their art. But it definitely kind of put a signal beacon out there, like you can do
Definitely.
this. It's something similar has been done before. So yeah, I mean, I would go so far as to say like, there's no Madonna wouldn't have been Madonna without Debbie Harry, and
No.
without Madonna, pop music, there'd be no Lady Gaga. Like it's hard to look at the dominoes that way, but
Yep.
there's a grit to a lot of those punk leading ladies, and Debbie Harry dressed it up with a smack in the face.
For sure.
It was this different kind of swagger. Yeah, she's super cool. So she's my number 4. We know your number 4 is Brittany Howard.
Yes.
So why don't we do your 3?
So my number 3, just coming off of, you mentioning Shirley Manson, is Shirley Manson.
Nice.
Best known for Garbage.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about her quite a bit
love her.
on this podcast for good reason. I probably don't need to say a whole lot about why she's on this list. Just the similar to other artists that we've talked about, blazed trails in style and attitude, and her just willingness to be herself and not compromise her art and her persona for anything or anybody else. Has a very long and successful career. They continue to put music out to this day. And I think also she has a range. And when I say range, I don't mean like, vocally necessarily, in terms of high, low, pitch or anything. What I'm talking about specifically is, she can come with a straight up punk rock attitude, or she can be like soft and sultry, or she can be like seductive, or she can be like, just kind of straight up rock and roll. Like I'm going to shout these lyrics out you and at you, and you're going to hear them,
Right.
Come hell or high water. She can do a whole lot. And she might not be one on this list that has necessarily the most technical skill in terms of her voice, but what she does with the voice that she has is incredible. And so I think that, this one was kind of one of the tougher decisions for me. Like, do I put Shirley number 3, number 4? It was kind of tough to position her.
It's also the personal thing you were saying too, right?
Yeah,
Just
I wanted
the
to make
personal
sure that like,
preference
okay,
there.
like she's one of my personal favorites, so I don't want to
Right.
I don't want to arbitrarily bump her up just for personal reasons. So, but she still made it to number 3 for sure for me.
And she's also someone who bent along with the rest of the band. I'm not taking anything away from Butch and them, but she bent pop music to fit Garbage.
Heck yeah.
Like those songs shouldn't necessarily have been hits, but there was another situation, just like the Alabama Shakes, of like, it's undeniable what's happening here.
Yeah.
This is now what pop is, and whether it's because you have an attractive female fronted artist, or because you just can't get the song out of your head, or the messaging is there, or whatever it is, like it was undeniable.
Right.
And everybody kind of recognized that. And there's something to be said about an artist who can just stand up and say, this is it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, can you imagine anybody else fronting Garbage? Like, it just
No.
doesn't work.
No, not at
It
all.
doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
So that's my number 3.
So my number 3, I'm going to stick with the CBGB's
Yes.
range, and I'm also going to go to Patti Smith. So Patti Smith is a tough one, because her music isn't my natural go-to. I have Patti Smith songs that I love, but I've admittedly just not spent a ton of time. Again, full transparency, like I've had Just Kids on my bookshelf for a few years now, always wanted to read it and just never have, and pulled it down before. It was on my nightstand and just, it hasn't happened.
Right.
But she, almost beyond anybody else that we're talking about, in my opinion, like, you know, Debbie did what she did in her lane, and Susie did what she did in her lane, and Chrissy. Patti Smith, there was that, it was just going to happen, you know, like she has said that she always felt that there was something that was blossoming in her, and she just needed to figure out how to make it bloom. And she just wound up gravitating towards New York. She was a poet. We talked in the CBGB's episode about the place called Max's Kansas City, which was the sort of initial and alternate space. And she was going there, and, you know, she's reciting poetry. She was writing plays. Like, this stuff was just coming out of her.
Yeah, she's a lot more than just a songwriter.
Yeah, and she becomes sort of like the musical component or attribute or voice of the beat generation of poets, your Ginsbergs and Burroughs. She's hanging out with them, like, completely interwoven. And look, Debbie Harry was like Andy Warhol's muse at one point, so it's like this is all happening across the board. But there's a 2-month residency at CBGB's with television and the Patti Smith Band, and from there, like, that initial album is a spark that goes beyond influencing Courtney Love and Shirley Manson and whomever else. I mean, there's no U2 or REM. Like, Michael Stipe has said that the reason why he was inspired to sing and felt like he could be the front person of a band is because of Patti Smith, you know, like
hugely influential.
The Smiths, like Morrissey and Johnny Marr, have talked about, like, that's the reason why. Florence from Florence and the Machine, who I said, you know, I was battling with, has called her North Star. She wrote a song about her, you know, like, there's something that will never be repeated with who Patti Smith is. And there's also something in that story, and I can't do it justice, but the broadest stroke is that she, you know, came to New York and did what I said she did, and she was creative and expressive, and then she got married in the very beginning of the 80s and basically retired. Like, she just went off.
Yeah. She's like, well, I did what needed to be done.
Yeah, she got it out, and there was still more to be done, but she decided she wanted that lifestyle, and so she, like, kind of turned that off. And then he passed, and her kids got older, and she was pulled back into this by Bob Dylan and like all of these people who had been influenced by her in the 70s. Then in the 90s come around, are like, Patti, you gotta come, like, get back out there.
Yeah.
And she went on to release new albums. She performs regularly, even to this day, and has this resurgence. But it is that story that I think in many ways is uniquely a female story. We talk about it in the workplace, about women having to put their careers on hold to raise a family, and whether that's a like how you weigh that choice. I think that is at least, unfortunately, socially in many ways, a very female situation. And she has maneuvered that, and it seems like she's gotten the most out of her life and has gone on to really be this massive catalyst for some of the most important artists of our time. So,
for sure.
If you only know the song that she did with Bruce Springsteen, like, that's fine. You should go listen to Horses. There's some beautiful songs on there. I need to educate myself, just like maybe you need to. But as we're talking about who has had the greatest impact in that position that we're framing it as, she can't not be in the conversation, I think.
100%. And I'm really, really glad that we're talking about her. It's funny because I would have kind of disqualified her because I don't necessarily think of her as a front woman, but it's more like she's the front woman of an entire movement. Like,
yeah.
So,
I mean, that is true. Like, it was the Patti Smith band, but it's true. Like, it is, a Patti Smith group rather. But you're right. Maybe she is just a solo artist and doesn't. Well, we can get into while we're framing it out. Yeah,
I am all for it. Like, I'm not going to disqualify her.
Yeah.
Now there's no way. Like, that was.
I gotta think about it. Yeah.
That was fantastic. No, I think she definitely deserves to be there for a couple of different reasons at the very least. But there's no understating her influence. That's for damn sure. You know what's also interesting that kind of it popped into my mind as you were talking about Patti Smith is that we're talking about these top 5 front women. And even the ones that, got their start in the 60s and 70s, all these people are still alive.
Yeah.
I feel like if we were doing the top 5,
dudes all died. Yeah.
Yeah. Half the list, they would all be dead.
I mean, spoiler alert, one of mine's not.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so that's not gonna hold. That's not gonna hold. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. It was inevitable. But yeah, thank you that was awesome. Yeah. Thank you for bringing Patti up for sure. Okay. So we kind of switched sides because of the Brittany Howard thing, and I knew that was going to happen. So we're at.
Why don't you go to 2?
My number 2, right? So, my number 2, front woman of rock is Ann Wilson.
Yeah. Okay.
Best known for Heart, of course. Arguably one of the, if not the most powerful, I'll say the most powerful voice in rock music. If I'm not mistaken, the first female front woman of what would be considered a hard rock band.
Right.
Obviously, along with Nancy Wilson, her sister. But man, I think that these days, Heart is not as well known for what they accomplished as they probably should be. Obviously, folks our age and older are more aware of their history and their catalog and what they did. But man, Heart is amazing. And they came, obviously they, as a lot of these groups did, as they moved from the hard rock roots of the 70s, some of them had some awkward phases in the 80s. So, and Heart is certainly no exception. Yeah. But through the whole time, through, the substance abuse and the difficulty and Ann Wilson's voice is just unmistakable. It's timeless. I'm reminded of her performance at, I want to say it was the Kennedy Center. It was a tribute to Led Zeppelin. And she performed along with a full-blown orchestra and choir, Stairway to Heaven, with the 3 surviving members of Led Zeppelin in the audience. And
wow.
You can see tears in Robert Plant's eyes. It's an amazing performance. And for her to do that, I mean, this was just in the past 10 years or so. Just to still have that kind of power and range in her voice is just incredible. And she, still active to this day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she kind of, I think in a lot of people's eyes, and I think historically you could say that she really blew the doors off of the possibilities for women in like heavier music. You know, coming from the hard rock roots of the 70s, you know, I don't think you then go on to have the metal and heavier rock bands with female lead singers without Ann Wilson. So
Yeah.
that's my number two.
No, I think that's a good call. I also think, again, we're talking about the Runaways, you know, Joan Jett and Lita Ford, who did help kind of in that sort of punk, and Lita was in the sort of glam metal space.
Right.
Open up some of those doors. You know, obviously Runaways late 70s, which is when the Heart hits are, right? If we're talking of the initial hits, those Magic Man, Barracuda, Crazy on You. So yeah, I think the argument could and should be made that that Ann Wilson might have done even more than the individual members of the Runaways to kind of open up those doors in the quote unquote hard rock space for women. You know, like I think that they broke down those doors. They were on my list of, I wasn't sure if Nancy was too predominant to consider Anne as the front woman but they do things individually, right? Like Anne does stuff solo. So I think it totally makes sense. I'm not familiar enough with their dynamic to know. Obviously, like I hear both of their voices on stuff, but Anne is the sort of face of the band, right? Like,
yeah, I would consider, and this is in no way, you know, meant to downplay anything that Nancy does, but you know,
she's an incredible guitarist,
incredible guitar player. Yeah, that's kind of her main role in the band. Not that she can't sing; she also has an amazing voice. But as in the context of Heart, she tends to be more of a guitar player slash like backup vocalist, but just kind of the fact that they're sisters, they have very similar voices, so they're able to, you know, like when they're harmonizing with each other, it's like
insane.
It sounds ridiculous just because of the similarities in their voice, and it's almost an anomaly because typically you don't, when you have people harmonizing with each other, and this I don't know, this might be a personal opinion more so than a hard fact, but it tends to be less often that you hear two people with very similar voices and it's sounding great when they harmonize together. Usually you want some tonal differences there. Otherwise it can kind of just sound overwhelming, and you know, there's just too much going on in the same sort of sonic space. But like they sound practically angelic together. And so, you know, can't understate, or I should say can't overstate the influence of Hart and Wilson, particularly in the hard rock space, the hair metal space, even just like kind of with the direction that they went in the 80s. But yeah, having her in either the number 2 or 3 spot was a very easy decision for me.
Cool. So my number 2 is an artist that I actually don't even listen to a ton. You know, wasn't in my wheelhouse initially. I have come to appreciate her in both my later years, just for my own listening purposes, but also just the reason, like as you trace back the artists that you love to find the sort of map of where things originated from so you can understand things better. Number 2 for me is Janis Joplin.
Wow.
So she came initially from as the front woman of this band, Big Brother and the Holding Company. 2 albums there, 2 solo albums, and then heroin overdose and died.
Yeah.
27 Club. But performance at Woodstock, I mean, her voice and her demeanor, I think there's probably not a clean way to figure out, especially because we're talking about the late 60s at this point. We've been playing between the 70s and 80s a bunch. I mean, it's hard to see the butterfly effect from the late 60s, especially with an artist like this. But I mean, we talked about Stevie Nicks. There's so much in Stevie from what Janis kind of did on stage.
For sure.
So Pink has said that that's like her biggest influence. Again, we're talking about just this kind of swagger, this demeanor, this ability to hang with the late 60s rock boys, which is such a unique thing for a woman to be able to do. But I don't know. I was talking about Brittany Howard before, and there's so much in listening to Janis's music that I hear in Brittany Howard now. You know, there's it's undeniable, that blues tinted influence. You know, like I said, most women at the time in the 60s were in that folk songbook spaces. And she idolized Aretha and Big Mama Thornton, and was a blues and soul musician at heart. And there's nobody that really sounds like her, even though everybody sounds like her. You know, like you know that voice, you know that edge. And so I whether she's on the final list or not, I think she's one of the most important women in music.
Absolutely.
And I think that, again, there's a lot of this front woman goes on to then have a solo career. I think almost everybody that we've talked about has done that, basically.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Everything about where she was headed at the time seemed like this was going to be someone that we'd be hearing about for decades.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It feels like Amy Winehouse, right? Like, it just feels like everything was poised to be a certain way, and then what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's incredible and definitely worth, definitely on for my list, worth the spot.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. She deserves to be there. Interestingly enough, again, like somebody that in my considerations early on didn't have her in the running because and maybe it's just me in my own head, didn't consider her a front woman. Mm-hmm. But that's just me. But you make the point.
So she put out the solo albums as Janis Joplin and became known as Janis Joplin.
Right.
But so the argument could be made, Big Brother and the Holding Company, nobody really knows that band. There are songs from those albums, like when you get a Janis Joplin's greatest hits or whatever, half of it are Big Brother songs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, she's best known for those 2 later albums, and then all the other things that came out of it. All the she did like a bunch of recordings with like Jorma Kaukonen, and there's like people were just able to unearth tapes of her doing solo stuff. So yeah, you're right. Like her notability is as a solo artist,
but she definitely
started
fits.
off as a front woman. Yeah,
fits the definition and deserves to be on the list for sure. But like that's just me in my head when I'm thinking about these artists.
No, I totally agree. But
definitely a amazing pick. Definitely deserves to be in that spot for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, again, it's like I'm kind of kicking myself too. It's like, oh, I should have loosened up my definition a little bit.
No, No, I think this is good, and I think that we have future conversations to have where we can dial in other directions and
Oh, definitely.
and stuff too. Yeah, yeah.
But that
number
leads
one?
me to my number one.
Yeah.
So this one might be a little bit of a curveball, maybe not, because there are, so many of these amazing artists that we've mentioned that are deserving of the top spot. But
I'm gonna write it down here.
Okay.
I'm gonna write down
what yours is?
who I think yours is.
Oh, who you think it is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Now
So you go ahead and say it, and I'm gonna see if I wrote down the right thing.
My number one is Karen O.
Oh, I should have written that. I wrote Kim Deal. I was gonna write Karen O. And I was like, nah, he's gonna go Breeders. That's amazing. Okay, cool.
No,
I mean, written Karen
that's
O.
not a bad guess if you know me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking about Kim Deal. Okay. So again, coming through this and having to kind of not add more criteria, but thinking, okay, I have to put these women in more of a context than like being a fantastic front person for a band.
Mm-hmm.
And Karen O to me breaks so many different barriers all at once
Yes.
that it's like how do you even define who this person is?
Mm-hmm.
Like definitely not, again, someone who doesn't have what would probably traditionally be considered to have a technically, quote unquote good voice, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
She has an incredibly powerful voice. She just does things very differently. She does her own thing. There's nobody that you can point to where it's like, oh, she clearly is coming off of like this influence. Like, she might get more influence from groups like John Spencer Blues Explosion than, any other like female artist or more well-known singers. But she's so much more than like a punk singer. She is a visual artist. She's kind of a fashion icon. She came here to this country after being born in Korea. So she's an immigrant. She breaks boundaries in terms of like just culturally being an Asian American frontwoman of a rock band. All of the work that she's done with soundtrack. She's done soundtrack work for multiple movies. She did all of the music for Where the Wild Things Are with Spike Jonze. Just an incredible artist that can do so many different things and still continues to reinvent herself and do new and different and exciting things.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I hesitated after I kind of already decided that she was my number one pick.
Yeah.
But then like there was no argument that the contrarian side of my brain could come up with that like gave me any real reason to bring her further down the list. And it wasn't any other, there was no other artists that I could think like, okay, this person should be higher on the list than Karen, wherever the placing is for such and such a reason or such and such a reason. It was like, why am I even trying to, is it just because she's like relatively newer than, the majority of the other artists that we've talked about? Whatever the case, is it like the hipster like punk decision to go with someone like Karen O over a more what would traditionally be considered a technically proficient singer? I don't know, but neither here nor there. She's my number one pick, and it was not a difficult number one pick for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Karen's interesting too, because again, you could make the lines from those New York,
Yep.
Debbie Harry, Patti Smith, Chrissy Hind, like
Easily.
any of those, Susie and the Banshees, but it's not, it's again, it's wholly her own thing.
For sure.
It's there's influence there, but there's no redundancy or anything to it. Yeah, she's, I mean, it's crazy to think 20 years of music. So it's not even that recent.
Right.
The gaps
Right.
between albums have been crazy for Ye's album. She's done a bunch of stuff. What was the Danger Mouse Prima?
Lux Prima.
Lux Prima.
Beautiful album.
Yeah.
And her range too. That was the other thing I was going to mention, is kind of similar to what I was talking about with Shirley Manson, is that she's able to do like so many different things with her voice. Like it's just amazing to be able to go from like straight up, punk, yelling and screaming, animal noises, wild, like just craziness, and then to make something so like sultry and beautiful like the Lux Prima album. It's just kind of incredible. That kind of, more than anything else, really blows my mind, is when someone can belt it out with the best of them, go bonkers and just scream their guts out, and then also be able to, you could make a nursery rhyme children's album with how soft and like sweet you can be with your voice. Right. So I gotta give it up to her for that, for sure, among other things.
Yeah, there's no argument. Yeah, there's no argument there at all. Like there's no, yeah. All right, we have a tough conversation to have ahead of us.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, it's good. So my number one, is another one where I think we're gonna have to have conversations about criteria. So my number one's Tina Turner. So it's tough. I initially ruled her out because as a front woman, you would be saying that she's the front woman of a duo, which is Ike and Tina Turner, right? Except that when I looked at Stevie Nicks and I looked at the Eurythmics and Annie Lennox, I'm seeing equal presence in performance. I'm seeing vocals and split responsibilities there. Whereas if you go to the Ike and Tina period of her career where she hit the stage, it's the Tina Turner show. It part of it is her undeniable talent, the fire that she brought to it, that voice that was just it's incredible,
unmatched in the performance department for sure.
Yeah. So Ike, there's a lot that can be said about a man working behind the scenes to capitalize on a woman, a younger woman, that he's kind of talent scouted. Ike was the mastermind in all of it, and he's got his face on the albums, and when there's an interview, he steps into the frame and talks, and he's got his guitar, and he's doing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. But I kept mulling it over, and there were duets. They did perform together. It is billed as Ike and Tina Turner, but I ultimately viewed that as a sign of the times that maybe a toxic situation that, I mean, a noted toxic situation that she was in with her then husband, who was in control of her. And, I see her as the face, and the performer, the talent. Nothing against what he was doing, obviously, but I don't know. You watch those videos of her doing Proud Mary, and
right.
It's there's just nothing else. And then to have that full realization of her talent once she gets out of that. She has a few solo albums that don't do as much, and then she releases Private Dancer in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The song's written with Mark Knopfler, Jeff Beck on guitar, and she's got these people in her corner, but it's her show, and she delivers and has this renaissance and this celebration, and it's indicative of everything that you saw a decade before that, of who she was when she was operating under that scenario with
Mm-hmm.
Ike. But again, you're talking about like the undeniability of talent and ability and presence that can shine through, even persisting beyond a terrible situation that a woman can be in this industry. First black artist to be on the cover of Rolling Stone, first female artist to be on the cover of Rolling Stone, 100 million records worldwide, 12 Grammys. I mean, she's a tour de force. I think her and Janice, and even Patty, you could make the argument. I just looked it up as we were going through. So Horses was a Patti Smith solo song, and solo album rather. I thought that it was Patti Smith group through the 70s, and then she did the solo stuff under her own name in the 80s. But apparently, or 80s and 90s. But apparently, the 70s it was kind of alternating, and so her best known and most highly regarded stuff is as a solo artist. I mean, Patti Smith's group highly influential, but I feel like we can get down to brass tacks here.
Yeah.
But I feel like we both put Britney on our lists.
Well,
right?
it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the fact that we both named her. Um,
I'll make myself a clean note here. Yeah.
That kind of
I think
almost
Britney sticks. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It's funny, like in my mind, having both of us having her on our top fives almost kind of pushes her up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Because that I don't really remember that happening before, at least in terms of our high fives.
Yeah.
So she's definitely got to be on there.
Yeah. I mean, I am in agreement, even though she's not on my list. I'm in agreement that Karen needs to be on the list. I think there's also an undeniability about her. So
for sure,
I think
that's the only one on my
givens,
list that I would like really, really, really fight and be like, no, like we're not ending this episode unless Karen O is on the list.
Yeah, no, I think Karen's definitely on the list.
And out of any like personal, like, competitiveness or anything, just like literally like she absolutely 100% deserves to be there.
No, I agree. I feel like there's Debbie, there's Chrissy. Like I think I'm taking Patty out of it because she's primarily regarded as a solo artist. Janice is tough because, like, Piece of My Heart, like when you think of Janis Joplin, that's the song you think of, right? That's
right.
One of the main songs you think of, and that's a Big Company song. Like that's not a Janis Joplin song, But do you know that? Like,
No.
I don't know. I don't know if you know that.
Nope.
You know it as a Janis Joplin song. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's tough, man. Like,
It is tough.
I almost feel like my top three the argument could be made that they should be better fit for the most influential women in rock and roll history or something to that effect,
I mean,
right?
there's gray area and crossover though. Like, just because it's not something that I would have, or should I say, just because it's something that I had disqualified an artist for in my mind,
Sure.
like it doesn't mean anything. It's because it's such a, loose definition.
Yeah.
So I mean, they deserve to be on there. I'm not going to disqualify any of these artists for anything, really. Not the ones that we have in our top 5. So
my loose list right now, in no order, has Tina Turner, Karen O, Brittany Howard, Chrissy Hynde, and Debbie Harry in it.
okay,
That's what I'm working with right now. Is there anything that you feel like is like? Do you feel like Shirley needs to get in there and something else needs to come off? Do you feel like is there something else that we're missing on there that you think, or do you think that is a safe 5?
it's
names?
an absolutely safe starting point.
Right.
I worry about for kind of representation's sake, as far as how different a lot of these women are. Is it somewhat redundant to have both Chrissy and Debbie on there, or are we overthinking at that point? Like,
Yeah, I don't know if they both were birthed of a similar scene, but ultimately I think that they're different enough. I honestly would feel that more if we were at a place where it was like Debbie and Joan Jett, where it was
gotcha.
like that straight ahead punk scene. Like Chrissy, I don't think that. I think that she and Debbie Harry represent two different sides of a similar coin. But
Yeah, that's true.
I don't feel the redundancy on that.
Okay. So then but if Debbie is staying, but Patty and Janice
I think
were
Patty and
higher,
Janice go. Yeah.
they were higher on your list.
Yeah, but I think again, like I think again, and this isn't saying that that it's a you thing.
It's more a definition thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking as I think it through as we're talking through this form, I'm like, they don't even Tina doesn't fully cleanly fit the bill, but I think that in the manner that Ike and Tina manifested, she's undeniable as the front woman, whereas Janice, like you said, Janice, you don't even necessarily know Big Brother, and Patty is known for being Patti Smith.
Right.
I mean, like Lenny Kaye is her longtime collaborator. He's the guy in the Patti Smith group, but like, you don't know that. Like people, not you, Adam. I just mean like in general, like people don't know that,
Well, I think Tina stays for sure.
Yeah, I feel like Tina's undeniable ultimately, just because of what their relationship was. Like he almost made her as the front. Like the whole relationship was to have her as the front woman. He used her to manifest his plans and his vision for music. He found her and married her and made her this thing. So then ordering.
I mean, I would more make the argument to keep Ann Wilson than have both
Ann,
Chrissy and Debbie on there at the same time. So if Debbie stays as like a number 5 spot to hold it down, like I'm not going to make an argument for keeping Chrissy on the list.
Okay. So Ann Wilson, that's a good call out.
You talked about Britney obviously staying for sure.
I feel like Britney's in the 5 spot though. Like I had her 5, you had her 4. Mm-hmm. Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe it goes
Britney number 5, Debbie number 4.
Yeah, and 3, Karen 2, Tina 1. I mean, it almost feels too clean that our ones are either 1 or 2 or
it makes
vice
sense
versa.
though.
Yeah.
So I am definitely not going to argue against Tina being number 1. Like that is such a strong. That came out of left field for me too, but that is such a strong pick.
Yeah.
And
I also think Karen would be cool with it too.
It is the contrarian pick sort of.
Yeah.
I think Anne at number 3 works.
Yeah.
Really well. So I think honestly, like, I know it seems too easy, but I'm not going to fight the flow of how this is going.
Okay.
Because it's just, it's a collaborative effort, not a contest. So, like, okay, so then we're really just coming down to, is it Tina Turner number 1 or Karen O?
Right. So, yeah, so Tina Turner, Karen O, Ann Wilson, Debbie Harry, Brittany Howard is how I have it.
I honestly, I cannot think of a compelling argument. Like literally the only thing that I would have if I was like in a debate trying to put Karen O over the top is that there is the argument that is Tina Turner really a front, but she's such a front woman though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, she is known also heavily for her solo Tina Turner stuff, whereas Karen is known for a plethora of things, primarily of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and then almost just as this, I don't know, like what would you call her? She's like not an influencer. It's before even influencers existed, really, but it was just like, I don't know, like people idolize Karen O. Like people got their hair cut the way that she did, although I'm sure people got their hair cut the way Tina Turner did.
Yeah, but I mean, all of these things that we're saying about Karen, you could say about Tina. So
yeah, people got leather jackets because of Karen O.
I mean, but 100 million albums, dude.
Yeah, no,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I think the argument I'd make for Tina beyond those things is. And not to say like Karen, I know has had the same thing. I mean, she's a mom, she's, so these women have gone through uniquely female things to have this happen. So, but Tina, the story is so unfortunately, it like fully typified of what women went through in the music industry, and then the redemption and validation and realization of who she was is so beautifully I feel like it feels like a strong number 1 to me because it can sort of show that overcoming, right? It's just like it is the full example both of what a front woman is as a performer, and also what they went through to be that and to hold that title and that place and to be undeniable. So yeah, no, I if you're cool with number 1 with Tina, I think that it makes sense for me, obviously. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
That's gotta be it.
All right. So we're gonna go Tina Turner number 1,
Tina Turner
Karen
number 1,
number 2. Ann Wilson, number 3.
Yep.
Debbie Harry, number 4. Brittany Howard, number 5. I like this list.
Yeah, I can't think of any reason to move any of these around. Strong arguments all around.
All right, high five.
We're going to have to, at some point, because I'm all for coming to agreements with this stuff quickly, and quickly we're kind of at the 2-hour mark or so, but we had some other stuff we talked about
quickly. Yeah.
But maybe in the future we need to come up with something a little bit more. I don't want to say competitive, but like
Contentious.
maybe. I don't know. Or maybe
You
come
wanna
at it from
inject some drama
or
into
maybe
this?
each of us come at it from a different angle. And then we have to combine, like, they're not the same top 5 of something or other. Like, you have the top 5 of this thing, and I have the top 5 of that thing, and then
Okay.
we have to combine them somehow.
Okay, I like that.
I'm just spitballing for the future.
I'll chew on that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in some ways we did come at this differently because ultimately, like,
Kind of did.
it was a blend of how much personal influence versus historical influence, and also our definition of what a front woman was.
Yeah.
And in talking through it, like,
It was still way too easy to like, there was no arg. I mean,
yeah, well, we're
it's
buddies,
hard to
so
argue.
what are you gonna do? Yeah.
Yeah, we could.
we
I
go
mean, if there were, it depends on really what it is. But with these, like, this is such a strong top 5 that there was no like, you know, all right, that person doesn't belong on the list. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just
Right.
strong,
Right.
and it's amazing to me that, you know, I think other than Janice, all these artists are alive still. Like they're all alive.
Yeah.
There's no way we could get even close to that with a list of like the top 5 frontmen. Probably more than half of them would be dead.
Yeah.
But that's our top 5. Top 5 front women in rock music. Did you have any like runners up or like honorable mentions that deserve to be talked about real quick? Or
Yeah, I mean, look, we didn't even talk about Gwen Stefani other than as an influence, right? Like, Gwen Stefani is very important in that realm. Again, somebody who went on to then have her own celebrated solo career. I have my own thoughts on the authenticity of what's going on there as opposed to a lot of these other artists.
Yeah, understandable.
So I have that. I think Hayley Williams, there's a compelling case there. I'm a big Paramore fan. I'm interested to see what happens now. Like, she did the solo thing. She's back. Yeah,
I'm
there's
not
a lot
even
going
a
on there.
fan of Paramore. Like, I don't listen to them or anything. And she almost made my list just because of the influence.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's big.
I think 5 years from now, if things are going the way that they're going, it's a bigger conversation to have.
Yeah, no, they're
I think
huge.
She's already dead. I love Against Me. I'm a big Laura Jane Grace fan.
There you go.
So she rattled in my head, and we didn't really talk about Pat Benatar. But again, like,
See, that's
known
one
mainly
that
as
I
a
did
solo
think
album
of,
artist,
but
yeah.
See, that's why at least in my list building, she was disqualified. So
Yeah, same. Like, that's where I went to. I mean, it's her but it's her name, but it's Neil Giraldo. But then is it a duo? So yeah. I went the same way, where it's just like, yeah, but it was still an important artist, you know.
No,
What
good
about
call.
you?
No, not really. Honestly, like, my only kind of I really kind of want to put her as a Kim Deal, holding up the Kim Deal. Yeah, honestly, and I don't know what it was, but Kim Deal didn't come up in my mind and probably should have. Like, I'm a big Breeders fan.
Yeah.
Coming out of talking about the Pixies and stuff like that quite a bit on this show. So I'm not sure why. She definitely would have made a top 10. I'll say that. But
I promise I was going to, when I said I'm going to write it down, I was going to write Karen O.
No
I started
way.
to write it. I started to write it, and I'm like, no, it's going to be Kim Deal, you idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the
that would've
Karen
been so
O thing
much
was
cooler.
really easy. That would have been amazing. Always go with your gut. That first
Yeah, should
instinct.
have. Yep.
Anyway, this was awesome. We'll probably hit some fun Christmas stuff coming up soon here, and we got the end of the year coming up very, very quickly. So look out for that. Again, don't forget, we have an episode companion playlist. Any of the artists that we talked about here, they will usually end up on the playlist. We try to make it fit with the theme and the discussion within the podcast. You know, if you're the type of person that is always looking to discover new music or rediscover artists that you used to listen to, it's just a great way to do that. It's just fun. So it kind of adds another dimension to the show. But again, Liam, thank you so much for having another awesome episode, another great discussion. But yeah, at some point we need to figure out a way to really get at each other's throats. I don't know how we're gonna make it happen.
Figure out how to fight.
Yeah.
You know, I bet you if we got Dan in here, he would find a way to make us fight. I feel like if we had a third person that in here,
we need a third party to do that, to bring it out of us.
Yeah.
So we'll figure that out.
Check us out. We're on Twitter at retrogroove_pod.
Yes, sir.
Show us any cool vinyl that you're into. We post fun stuff there. And we are part of the Retrologic family of podcasts, and we have a really great Discord group of nerds who like movies and video games and music, and you can come hang out there and chat with us and just hang out. We're cool people.
Heck yeah, we love it. Thank you for listening. Adios.
Later.